get some perspective on all of this and from the latest WikiLeaks coming into CNN Centre. I've got Christopher Hill for you, a former US ambassador to South Korea and an envoy to the six-party talks on North Korea's nuclear ambitions, up in Denver, Colorado, for you this evening. Just minutes ago, the Guardian newspaper revealing that the WikiLeaks cables disclose that China, Chris, is, quote, ready to abandon North Korea, signalling its readiness to accept Korean reunification, privately distancing itself from the North Korean regime. This according to leaked US embassy cables. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I haven't seen that cable. Secondly, I don't think any cable would say China is ready to do X. It was probably some person they talked to who indicated that China is rethinking its North Korea policy. Whether that's true or not is hard to say. It was probably an embassy report where they're reporting what this person said. In any event, it's pretty clear the Chinese, we know from what is going on recently, is not prepared to abandon North Korea. And their solution to this problem right now is to call a six-party meeting. And I think the other participants, especially the U.S. and Korea and Japan, have said, wait a minute, what's the purpose of a meeting if we're not going to have any action?
Let me enlighten you and our viewers just a little bit more as we get more information as to what these WikiLeaked documents actually say. China's vice foreign minister telling US officials that Pyongyang was behaving like, and I quote, a spoiled child to get Washington's attention in April 2009 by carrying out missile tests. A Chinese ambassador warning that North Korean nuclear activity was, and I quote, a threat to the whole world's security. It goes on this evening. You're suggesting that nothing of what we are hearing or may hear tonight on North Korea from China is going to make any difference at this point?
Well, I don't think these leaked cables are changing Chinese policy. We know what Chinese policy is or is not. And basically, they are not prepared to make any bold changes at this point. Instead, they're looking to call a meeting.
I want you to listen to what the US scientist, Dr. Hecker, told me just after he had returned from a trip to North Korea very recently. Listen to this.
The light water reactor that we saw, the small experimental light water reactor construction site, was expected because one of my colleagues was there the week before. What was not expected and totally surprising was the magnitude of the uranium enrichment facility in which you do some of the crucial steps to prepare fuel for the light water reactor. Quite frankly, it was stunning.
Does what Professor Sigrid Hecker, or what he found, surprise you, Chris?
Well, it does, of course, in the sense that according to Dr. Hecker, they had functioning some 1,000 or more centrifuges that were actually functioning in Yongbyon, which is obviously been a place of some interest to us because that's where the plutonium reactor is. So indeed, that's very important. And ironically, it amounts to a North Korean declaration on their uranium enrichment program, something we sought for some time. So it also proves, frankly speaking, that the North Koreans sat there with 5 other countries in the room and lied to all 5 countries. Now, a lot of people would say, of course they lied, they always lie. Well, they don't always sit down and tell 5 countries, including China, something that is simply not true. So it's another reason why these talks did not successfully end back in 2008, because we were not able to get the North Koreans to agree to verification measures, which we would have had been necessary to look at their declaration on uranium enrichment.
Let's just remind our viewers what we are learning this hour from WikiLeaks. Leaked dispatches allegedly showing that Beijing is frustrated with military actions of what they call a spoiled child and increasingly favouring a unified Korea. You've, to a certain extent, poo-pooed that tonight on this show. What we do know is that China wants at least to talk through the six-party talks route, if that indeed is what they hope will happen. Japan says no to six-party talks at this point. Firstly, do you think it's the best step forward? And if you were the envoy still, would you be picking up the phone to Tokyo and saying, get on with it?
Not at all. I think the U.S. needs to work very closely with its allies in the region. This is not a U.S. problem. It's a problem for several countries, mainly South Korea. And so I think the South Koreans have been pretty clear that they want to see some action from the Chinese, not in terms of calling a meeting, but in terms of getting their creation, that is North Korea, under control. And I think everyone is concerned that were China to succeed in just calling an international meeting, China would essentially be off the hook. I mean, after all, North Korea can't live for a week without a good relationship with China. And so I think the focus has been quite rightly on getting the Chinese to do more in terms of dealing with the North Koreans. Let me just add, too, that many Chinese are indeed frustrated with North Korea and have been for some time. But within China, there's really a split view on North Korea. Many people feel it's a historic ally. They should not abandon a historic ally. Some people are concerned that a unification of the Korean Peninsula would mean a gain for U.S. strategic interests in the region. There are a lot of different viewpoints about North Korea in China. I think these events of the last week on the part of the North Koreans are further evidence, or should be further evidence to the Chinese, that they need to make a decision. That is, they need to talk about China's future and not be coddling this relic of China's past.